Well, welcome again. My name is Dave Landers. I'm the Director of Educational Programs for our university libraries, and this is one of the events that we sponsor, among other events that we do with the Los Angeles County Office of Education and K-12 schools. One of my passions is history. I taught history for 15 years in middle school, so some people think I'm just a bit off, but after teaching middle school. But I love history. And I love the stories of history, and history to me is telling stories. And one thing that my students have always enjoyed is hearing from people that lived through events in history. And that's what we have tonight. We have a World War II veteran who was a Navajo Code Talker, and many don't even know the story of the Navajo Code Talkers, other than the movie. How many of you saw the movie Wind Talkers? Okay, I hear it's kind of accurate for a Hollywood movie. But we also have in the audience too some other veterans that served as Navajo Code Talkers as well between World War II and Vietnam. If you don't know, the code was a secret until 1969 when it was declassified. So many of the Navajo Code Talkers didn't talk about what they did, what the code was, and that's why many of us don't know what the story is. I met Louis Yazzie, who's a neighbor of mine in Glendora, who was a Code Talker. He came to our History Day LA event that we have for 4th through 12th graders, and they talked about the Navajo Nation, the Navajo Code Talkers, and then Louis has been telling me, you've got to get Peter MacDonald to come. You know, you've got to call him. He'll come if you call. And so I actually did call, and I talked to his daughter, and we talked over the summer, and you wouldn't believe how busy his schedule is. He puts me to shame. So, but what you don't want to hear me tonight. You want to hear Peter MacDonald. And so I'd like to, before we call him up, we have our Azusa Pacific University ROTC, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So I will ask our captain to come. And
if you got hands, please stand. Put your right hand over your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
I think we have a few veterans in the house. Before we get started, if you are a veteran and you are able, would you please stand? Thank you for your service. I won't ask branch you're in. We don't want to get into the, who's better. But I think it's safe to say tonight the Marine Corps is the front and center branch that's being honored tonight. So without further ado, I'd like to ask Peter MacDonald to come up.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's real a pleasure and a privilege for me to be here this evening. I know there are some Navajos here, so I want to say, Yate shidane, anchit oh, keta hiti ne, akote de pashojon stokwe. The ne na be honi kliniki nada hil sado kodishin jonoko they not nish adon haschen hitso kedashin jonoko inna Bate sa do bate no sin. And those of you who are veterans, I know there are Navy, Marines, Air Force, Army, and others, Coast Guards, all work together to maintain peace and harmony within the Navajo Nation, and also United States. I want to say, Semper Fi to all you who are Marines. You know, it's really something special for me to be here at Pacific University. It was back in 1957, after graduating from University of Oklahoma. I got a job in Los Angeles, El Segundo, Culver City. I got a job with Howard Hughes Aircraft Company. And I worked for Howard Hughes until 1963. So I'm pretty well familiar with the Los Angeles area. Azusa. Why Azusa? Because back in those days, 1950s, early 60s, there were at least 3 dozen Navajos in this area. And we formed a Navajo, Los Angeles Navajo Club. So we could get together and maintain our language, have fun, maintain the culture as well. And what we used to do is go up to the mountain of San Gabriel Mountain on weekends. We'd take a sheep up there and find a nice place up in the mountains and butcher the sheep, make fried bread, and we remember all the things that we had done when we were growing up on Navajo Nation. That was how I became aware of such a place as Azusa and also Big Bear. So I've been here before, and this is the first time I really got back here as someone who wants to share my experience with you. I've been back here several times, but only on a different business. In the early part of World War II, shortly after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the United States was getting ready to fight back in the Pacific. Not too long after December 7, 1941, Marines, Navy, Air Force, and Army ran into one big problem. The problem was communication. They tell us that in any war, whichever side that has the best communication normally has the advantage in the war. Well, in this case, the enemy had the advantage. Why? Because they were breaking every military code that was being used in the Pacific, making it very difficult to strategize without the enemy knowing what you're going to be doing, where you're going to be, what day and what hour. No, Pacific is a huge area. It takes days to go from point A to point B, sometimes even weeks. So the enemy had all that time to break the code. Breaking code was very bad for us because no matter what code you use, the enemy would break it. The enemy would know exactly where we're going to be, what route we're going to be taking, what hour, where, and when we are going to be at a specific location. And they would be there with their submarine blow up our shipment of supplies, equipment, as well as personnel. This became a real problem for Marines and Navy, Air Force, and Army. A gentleman by the name of Philip Johnston was working near San Diego back in early 1942. This situation of enemy breaking code became public knowledge around January of 1942. Philip Johnston learned of this situation, so he went over to the United States Marine Corps base to talk with the Marine Corps communication officers. He told them, why not use Navajo language as a code? The enemy doesn't know Navajo language, therefore it could be safe. Well, after much explanation, Marines really couldn't understand what he was really talking about. So Philip Johnston went back to the Navajo Nation, brought 4 Navajos to San Diego Marine Corps Base to demonstrate what he was talking about. They put 2 Navajos with radio headset on one end of the building, the other 2 on the other end. They gave these 2 a message to send to the other 2. They compared the 2 messages, the one that was sent, the one that was received. They're similar, but not exactly alike. But the Marines were very desperate to get a code that the enemy would not understand. So they asked the Commandant of the United States Marine Corps in Washington, D.C., permission to try this suggestion made by Philip Johnston. Philip Johnston was not a Navajo. His parents came to the Navajo Nation late 1800 as missionaries to Navajos. So Philip Johnston grew up on a Navajo, played with Navajo kids, and learned the language. He spoke Navajo very well. He also knew the culture of Navajo. Well, the Commandant asked if they could try this. His initial response was, no, don't do that. We don't know these Indians, he said. All we know is what we see in the movies. When they see a wagon train, they yell and holler right around that wagon train shooting arrows. This is not that kind of a war, so leave it alone. That was the Commandant's initial response. Number 2, the Commandant said, Marine Corps is a very proud organization. We don't want anyone wearing United States Marine Corps uniform that might embarrass this proud organization. Just do the best you can. I'm sorry. Well, with that rejection, the enemy continued to break codes. The enemy continued to move in our direction real fast, taking strategic islands, as a matter of fact, that we need in order to get close to their homeland. More pressure on the Commandant. We need a code. We might as well just call the enemy and say, hey, we can go such and such a place, such and such a time, we can be such and such location. That's how it was. Well, the Commandant, more pressure on the Commandant. Eventually, the Commandant, in April of 1942, said, okay, but you got to do it my way. My way is whatever project you can be putting together to create a military code using Navajo language, it has to be top secret. No one should know what you are going to do, because all military codes are top secret. So it has to be a top secret project. Number one, ask the Navajo Nation to use the language only. Number two, just recruit 30 young Navajos. Don't tell them what you're going to do with them. Just ask them if they want to fight and shoot the enemy, not with arrows, but with rifles. The Commandant also said, we want to make sure that these 30 young Navajos can become United States Marines first. So don't tell them. Just ask them if they want to join Marines and fight the enemy. If they say yes, recruit them like you do all other Marines you recruit. Process them through boot camp, just like everyone else that joins the Marine Corps. Process them through combat training. If they pass that, process them through Marine Corps Communications School. And if they pass that, go ahead and use them what you want to do with them. But remember, this is a top secret project. So, Marine Corps came out to the Navajo Nation in May of 1942 to recruit 30 young Navajos. Well, they stopped at Flagstaff, Arizona, asked a lot of questions. They were told that out in the Navajo Nation, there's no power lines, no telephone lines, no buildings, no schools, just a lot of hogans, a lot of sheep, horses, and cattle. Back in the 30s and 40s, most Navajo families had at least 1,500 head of sheep, 500 head of cows, and about 30 horses. Well, no highways either, just wagon trails here and there. So they keep asking questions, where do Navajo kids go to school? They were told that there were 4 federally operated boarding schools for Navajo kids. One is on the east side, Shiprock, New Mexico. That's where I went to boarding school back in the 30s. The second one, east of Gallup, New Mexico, Fort Wingate, New Mexico. The third boarding school for Navajo kids, Fort Defiance, Arizona. The last one, the fourth one, is on the west side of the Navajo Nation, Tuba City, Arizona. That's where I live now. But I was born and raised about 150 miles east of Tuba City. That's where I was born and raised, East Nusbus, Arizona, about 8 miles from the Four Corners. But, like traditional Navajo way, I'm over at my wife's place. In Navajo way, back in those days, not today, but back in the days of 1930s and 40s, you don't talk to the girl that you're going to marry. As a matter of fact, sometimes you don't even know who she is. What happened is that the parents do the negotiation, all kinds of negotiation, trying to marry you off to a girl some distance away, because make sure they're not related clan-wise. Of course, the father and mother of that girl asked a lot of questions. What kind of a boy are you trying to marry into our daughter? Well, they tell them all about what you can do, and sometimes stretch the truth a little bit about you. And then, of course, your parents also ask questions. What can your daughter do? Oh, she can grind corn, she can weave, and all how to handle, cook all kinds of things. So they agree. Meantime, you don't know this is going on. She doesn't know either. So all of a sudden, a date is set. And then the bridegroom and the family pack up their horses and the gifts and go all the way to the bride's place. And they have a ceremony there. And then they give the gift to the bride's family. All night long they talk to you. In the morning, your family goes back to where you came from, and you're staying at the in-laws' place. I always wondered why they did that. Not too long, I found out that the bride's family actually acquires a slave. So you become a slave to your wife's family. Well, I'm here with my daughter, my youngest daughter. Her name is Charity. She drives me around. There she is. She and her husband and her little boy named Story live right next to us. So I get requests to speak here and there. And sometime I want to get in the car and drive. She said, no way. We don't want over 90-year-old person to be driving on this busy highways, too dangerous. So she takes the keys away from me and drives me around wherever I'm asked to speak. Well, that's the story about where the boarding schools are and that little culture thing about Navajo marriage, why I'm at least 150 miles west of where I was born. Well, Marine recruiters went to these boarding schools, recruited 30 young Navajos. Using the tactics the commandant suggested, you want to fight, you want to shoot the enemy, you want to wear a nice blue Marine Corps uniform like this, join the Marines, fight the enemy. So they did. They volunteered, all 30 of them. They gave them preliminary physical exam. One dropped out. So just 29 were bused down to San Diego. Now we're talking May of 1942. 29 young Navajos bused down to San Diego. They were formed into one platoon. There were several platoons going through boot camp all at the same time. Graduation from boot camp. They grade each platoons. Navajo platoon came in number 1 of all other platoons going through boot camp at that time. Now, of course, that message went back to the commandant. Commandant was very happy. He said, wonderful. Process them through combat training now and see what they do. Well, what the United States Marine Corps and Commandant don't know is back in those days, in the 30s and 40s, it was not unusual for any one of us to put in 5 to 10 miles every day, managing the livestock that I just mentioned. Before sunup, you eat, you get out and move these livestock out. 3 or 4 of us young people. And they tell us to take these animals out to a nice green pasture. if you do find a green pasture, stay out there overnight if necessary, maybe 2 nights. So you carry a blanket. If you find a good pasture, you stay out there with the animals, whether it's raining, dust storm, sun beating down on you, or snowing, you stay out there. And also, one of us would be carrying 22 rifle. You get hungry out there. So you shoot a rabbit, you barbecue the rabbit, that's your meal for the day. That's how it was. Sometimes 10 to 15 miles every day, managing these livestock. So, to these 29 young Navajos that just went through boot camp, it was like a vacation. Oh my God. A bed to sleep on with mattress, clean sheets, pillows. We didn't know there was such a thing as pillows until we got to San Diego. Also, you don't have to carry a 22 rifle to get something to eat. Just get in a chow line. 3 meals a day. What a life. Combat training, the same thing, no problem. Marine Corps Communications School at Camp Pendleton, California, where they taught us how to use various communication equipment that was in use at that time, how to make minor repairs out in the field. They also taught us Navy semaphore signals, taught us Morse code, memorized, tested, we passed. Also, they taught us how to string telephone lines from coconut trees to coconut trees. All of that, Marine Corps Communications School. So these 29 young Navajos that went in first graduated from Marine Corps Communications School with high grades, and then they were put in a separate bus, separated from all other Marines. They were then taken to the east side of San Diego, a top secret location, a building about half the size of an average hotel with high fence all around that building and a gate. At the gate, there were 2 guards. Over the gate, there's a big sign that said, "Keep out, top secret operation." Through that gate, United States Marine Corps colonel, a full-bird colonel, marched these 29 young Navajos through that gate into a classroom, about a third the size of this room here. And in that classroom were tables with 4 chairs around each table. In front of each chair, writing tablets, a pencil, blackboard, chalk and eraser on the wall. Colonel then addressed these 29 young Navajo Marines now. He said, "Gentlemen, you are Marines now. You're ready to go fight and shoot the enemy. But before you do that, we'd like for you to do something else. We'd like for you to develop a military code using your language." This is the first time, mind you, that these 29 young Navajos volunteered to fight the enemy and shoot the enemy. Here they are in a top secret classroom with writing tablets and pencils in front of them. The colonel said immediately, "Whatever you do in this classroom, it's top secret. No one knows you're here. You are not to tell anyone that what you're doing in this classroom. Before you go back out that gate, we're going to search you from your toes to the top of your head making sure you don't take anything out of this top secret classroom back to your barracks. You are not to tell anyone what you are doing in this classroom. As a matter of fact, they don't know that you're in this classroom. Also, the colonel went on and said, whatever code you're going to be developing, we don't want you to copy it and carry it in your pocket. You're not going to carry anything out of this classroom. You're not going to carry anything to battle, because if you do, an enemy shoots you, they search you, and they'll find that copy of the code if you're carrying it around with you. Nothing like that. Everything will be subject to memory only. Another thing the colonel said, whatever code you're going to be developing in this top secret classroom, only you would know. Not another Navajo, not in this classroom, but outside, should ever know what these code words represent. Only you would know. That's the kind of code we want. With a lot of instructions of how this particular project is top secret and what have you. The colonel then said, here's a box full of sample messages sent in combat. Look at it, read it, and see how you can send messages like this using the code you're going to be developing. Colonel sat down, lit his pipe, and said, go to work, gentlemen. Imagine yourself sitting there, one of the 29. You joined the Marines to fight, did everything right, and here you are in a classroom, being told whatever you're doing is top secret, and you're going to develop a military code. So, well, like good Marines, you have to do what the officer says. So they did. They looked at the messages. They read it. They were all written in English language using the English alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F. This presents the first big problem for these 29 young Navajos. We're talking now June of 1942. Why was it a problem? Because Navajo is not a written language. We don't have Navajo words for letters like A, B, C, D, E, F. So how in the world are you going to send a message? You don't even have words for it. So these 29 young Navajos talk about it, discuss it. Eventually one of them went to the blackboard and wrote on a big letter A and said, since only we in this top secret classroom are to know what these code words that we are developing represents, let's call the letter A Belasana. Belasana in Navajo means apple. Okay? So they wrote down in their tablet, letter A equals Belasana or apple. How about letter B? After discussing it a while, they called letter B Shush. Shush in Navajo means bear. Letter C, Mase. Mase in Navajo means cat. Letter D, B. B in Navajo means deer, D-E-A-R. You see what they were doing? They were selecting Navajo words that they are very familiar with on the reservation. Apples, bears, go hunting, deer, and also cats. Each letter, like A, apple, when it's spelled in English, starts with A. Bear, when it's spelled in English, starts with B. That's why they decided to call bear B, Shush, or bear. because it starts with B, all the way down the line. Some of the letters, they had difficulty agreeing what to call. Different suggestions, declining it, discussing it, finally, eventually, like the letter J. They eventually decided to call the letter J Tilichuki. Tilichuki in Navajo means jackass. It's not what you're thinking, but these are animals we had. We used them to haul water and wood and manage the livestock. All the way down to letter Z. The code word for letter Z was Beshtotlish. Beshtotlish in Navajo means zinc. Zinc starts with Z, right? Also, we have quite a few zinc on Navajo. So now they have developed code words for each letters of the English alphabet, and only they in that top secret knows, not another Navajo. If they hear us say Belasana, another Navajo not in that classroom, hear us say Belasana, they think we're talking about something you eat. But we, the code talkers, when we hear Belasana, we write down the letter A. All the way down the line, of course, the colonel also said, there's another Marine Corps officer in that same classroom. He said, this officer is a Marine Corps military code expert. Whatever code you develop, you run it by him. So they did. They said, we got code words for each letters of the English alphabet, and only we know. No one else on the outside does. Well, the officer said, that's great, that's wonderful. But remember, we have an enemy that is very smart and very intelligent. They can break any code that's in use. And they use different methods to do that. One of the methods is repetition. There's quite a few English words that have more than one A or more than one B, more than one C. That's repetition. Like the word Guadalcanal has 4 A's in it. So you don't want to say Belasana, 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 Belasana 4 times, spelling Guadalcanal. So back to the drawing board. What do? Well, the 29 young Navajos decided, okay, if that's the case, then why don't we create 2 additional words for each letters of the English alphabet? Like the letter A, the first code word would be Belasana, apple. The second code word for the letter A would be Tennit. Tennit in Navajo means X, something you chop wood with. The third code word for the letter A would be Willachi. Willachi in Navajo means ant, A-N-T. 2 additional words for each letters of the English alphabet from A to Z. They ran it by the code expert. The code expert said, wonderful, that's what we want, terrific. Yeah, terrific for you. But what that means is we had to memorize that many more code words for each letters of the English alphabet. Remember, everything is subject to memory only. There were many military terms that there were no Navajo words for it, like hand grenade. We never know there's such a thing as hand grenade until we got to San Diego. No Navajo words for that. So what do we decide to call hand grenade? Nomasi. Nomasi in Navajo means potato. Hand grenade looks like a potato. So, if another Navajo not in that top secret classroom hear us say Nomasi, they think we're talking about French fries. But we, the code talkers, when we hear the word Nomasi coming through the air, we write down hand grenade. creating code words every day from sunup to sundown, all through the month of June. Into July of 1942. By mid-July, there were over 260 code words developed by this first 29 young Navajos recruited to develop their first set of code words. Every Friday, there would be a test. They divide the group into two, Group A and Group B. Group A is given a radio set, headsets, and Group B the same thing. They give Group A a message containing all those code words that are developed. Sent to Group B. Group B writes it down. They compare the two messages to see how well we are memorizing the code words. Test every Friday. Well, toward the end of July 1942, final test, Group A and Group B. Group A is given a real tough message containing all of those 260 code words just developed and memorized. Sent to Group B. Group B wrote it down. They compared the two messages, very much alike, with one exception, punctuation marks. Back to the classroom to create code words for punctuation marks. A period, no problem, dashigen. Dashigen in Navajo means a black dot. Semicolon took a little time to create code word for it, but eventually it was called dashigen. Betset not dead. Dashigen betset not dead in Navajo means a black dot that lost its tail. That would be the code word for semicolon. Question mark. Aja. Aja in Navajo means ears. Question mark looks like an ear. All the punctuations you could think of, code words were developed, memorized. Back to Group A and Group B. Group A is given that 260 code words that had just been developed and memorized, including punctuation marks. Sent to Group B. Group B wrote it down. They compared the two messages. By golly, it's very, very much alike. As a matter of fact, it looks like a Xerox copy of the one that was sent. At this juncture, the colonel said, "Gentlemen, we're finished now. We can test this code that you just developed, top secret military code that you just developed in actual battle, to see how your memory works and under enemy gunfire." So, toward the end of July 1942, 13 of the Navajo Code Talkers, of the 29 that went in, developed the code, memorized it. 13 of them were sent overseas to join the 1st Marine Division. 1st Marine Division was in Australia, getting ready to go on the first offensive movement in the Pacific. August 7, 1942. 76 years ago, 1st Marine Division landed on the beaches of Guadalcanal, August 7, 1942, with 13 Navajo Code Talkers to test this new code that was just developed. Again, it's a top secret operation. 3 weeks after the landing, General Vandergrift, commander of the 1st Marine Division, sent word back to the United States saying, "This Navajo code is terrific. The enemy never understood it. We don't understand it either. But it works. Send us some more Navajos." That was the message General Vandergrift sent back to the United States to the Commandant of the United States Marine Corps. Commandant then, of course, was very happy, so he ordered San Diego Marine Corps Base to take charge of this new military code that was just developed, tested, and passed the test. So, from that day on, San Diego Marine Corps Base took charge of recruiting Navajos. After August 1942, using the same tactics, come out here and say, hey, you want to join the Marines? You want to shoot the enemy? You want to wear a blue uniform like this? Come join the Marines. Nothing about codes. Zero. So we all volunteered to join the Marine and fight. I went in early 1944 at age 15. That's another story. But anyway, recruiting Navajos every month, going through boot camp, combat training, communication school, and if you pass all of that, then they separate you from the rest of the Marines, take you to their top secret location, top secret classroom, and learn those code words that were developed initially by the 29 young Navajos. If you pass that test, they certify you as a Navajo Code Talkers and ship you overseas to join the rest of the Marines. That's how the code was developed and tested on the first landing in the Pacific Guadalcanal. After Guadalcanal, every landing in the Pacific, Navajo Code was used. As a matter of fact, right after the test of this new code on Guadalcanal, Navajo Code became an official military code to be used in the Pacific, just like all other military code in use at that time, to be protected the same way. After Guadalcanal, Bougainville. After Bougainville, Cape Cluster. After Cape Cluster, New Britain. After New Britain, Tarawa, Macon, Kwajalein, Inuitok, Saipan, Tinian, Guam. I was on Guam. After Guam, the next island, Palaloo, a real bad one. After Palaloo, Iwo Jima, another bad one. After Iwo, Okinawa. After Okinawa, some of us were sent into North China. There were close to 1 million Japanese soldiers in Manchuria who didn't want to surrender even after the emperor says, we quit. They were saying, Emperor, you may quit, but we're not going to quit. We're going to continue fighting. So they sent 1st Marine Division, 6th Marine Division into North China to get those guys to surrender. They eventually did. October 25, 1945, we have separate peace treaty ceremony with those Japanese in North China at Tsingtao, China. October 25, 1945. All through these battles, Navajo Code was used. How was it used? It was very organized. Every landing, 2 communication network is established by Marines and Navy. The first one, Navajo Communication Network, they call it. Navajo Communication Network for all top secret confidential messages. Messages you don't want the enemy to know goes through Navajo Communication Network from the front line, beach command post, into the command ship. Command ship is usually a battleship From that battleship, command ship, the general and the admirals are directing the operation for that landing. And all other units used in the landing, Navajo Code Talkers in those locations, including the aircraft carrier, Navajo Code Talkers. Marine Air Wings, they had Navajo Code Talkers. Marine tank units had Navajo Code Talkers. Marine artillery unit had Navajo Code Talkers. Everywhere, for all top secret confidential messages you don't want the enemy to know, went through Navajo Communication Network, every landing. The second communication network, English Communication Network, for all other messages you don't want the enemy to know, went through English Communication Network from the front line beach command post into the command ship. As a matter of fact, in the command ship there were two tables. Usually it's a battleship in their communication room. Around one table sits about 5 of us Navajo Code Talkers with message pads in front of us. Navy also assigns us every landing a runner to stand behind each one of us 24 hours a day. When the first fire is shot on the island, all hell breaks loose. Messages everywhere, both English and Navajo coming in. So at this table, around which Navajo Code Talker sits, messages start coming in Navajo Code. We'd write it down in English, hand it over our shoulder to the runner that's assigned to stand behind us 24 hours a day. He takes it up to the bridge, gives it to the admiral or the general. They read it, they respond. The runner brings it back down. If on the top of that message it says Arizona, New Mexico, we send that back out in Navajo Code to wherever it is intended. If it does not have that, there's a next table right next to us. Around that table sits blonde-haired, blue-eyed kids with headphones just like us. They send that out in English code. These two networks, Navajo and English, work together everywhere, side by side, from the time the first shot is fired on the island until the island is secured. That's how this Navajo code was used in every battle. How does it sound? Well, let's go to Iwo Jima. Most people are familiar with Iwo. 3 Marine Division landed on Iwo Jima, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, February 1945. Marines recruiting a lot of Navajos all through this time. Usually, each division of the United States Marine Corps have at least 70 Navajo Code Talkers assigned to each division. So whichever division is going to do the landing, Code Talkers within that division provide that top secret, confidential messages you don't want the enemy to know, goes through Navajo network with every landing, whether it's just one division landing, 2 or 3, like on Iwo. On Iwo, 3 divisions, each division had at least 70 Navajo Code Talkers. So you're talking about over 200 Navajo Code Talkers involved in that Iwo Jima landing to provide that top secret, confidential messages you don't want the enemy to know, went through that network. So, on the island of Iwo, on the south side, of course, there's Mount Suribachi. Most people are familiar with that. In the center is the airstrip. On the north side, there's some little hills. Beneath one of those hills, a company of Marines was pinned down very badly. They were being fired on from 3 different directions. Mortar shells were being dropped on them. They were hunkering in their foxhole desperately, can't move. The commander of that company scribbled a message handed to the code talker that was covering that particular unit for the front line. Asked him to send that message to Beach Command Post asking for help. What did the Navajo Code Talker do? He got the message from the commander of that company, written in English. He then dialed another Navajo Code Talker down at the Beach Command Post and sent that message. What did he say? By the way, this message I'm going to tell you is the exact message that was sent on Iwo. A copy of this message is the Marine Corps Archives in Washington, D.C. So if you happen to be in Washington, D.C., go to the Marine Corps Archive and look for this message I was just going to tell you. Well, the Navajo Code Talker got the message. He sent it to Navajo Code Talker at the Beach Command Post. What did he say in Navajo? He said, Tepe anna achi bi dat ilkahe de na sonse tanji klochen. Linta tsa ta hasta na ki shash. I know those of you who are not Navajos don't know exactly what I'm talking about. But let's say that that message was broadcast out to the Navajo people. What did this Navajo Code Talker say in Navajo asking for help? Here's exactly what he said in Navajo. Sheep, eyes, nose, deer, destroyer, tea, mouse, turkey, onion, sick horse, 3, 6, 2, bear. Is that asking for help? Sheep, eyes, nose, deer, sick horse, what in the world is that? Navajos don't know what he was talking about, just a bunch of Navajo words. But the code talker down at the Beach Command Post, as each Navajo words come through the air, he writes it down in English. What did he write down? Sheep, eyes, nose, sick horse? No. He wrote down, send demolition team to Hill 362B. That was the message. That message in Navajo code took 20 seconds. After 20 seconds, the Beach Command Post commander organized a rescue team to save that company of Marines. Tanks with flamethrowers, other heavy units was sent out there. That's just one little example of how Navajo code was used and what it sounds like. You can see that if you're Navajo, didn't go through that top secret Navajo code school and memorize the code words, you have no idea what we're talking about whatsoever. It's a code, a military code. A lot of people have the wrong understanding. They think that somebody gives us a message and we read it in Navajo to another Navajo. No, that's not. It's a code, a military code, top secret. No one knows except us. That's the way it worked, Navajo code. An officer by the name of Major Connor with 5th Marine Division on the Iwo Jima wrote a report to his superior. And in that report, he said, the first 48 hours of Iwo Jima landing, over 800 messages were sent in Navajo code. And he put it in parentheses, without a mistake. The first 48 hours on Iwo Jima landing, just one division, 5th Marine Division, over 800 messages in Navajo code. Remember, there are two other divisions, 3rd and 4th. They also have Navajo Code Talkers. So we multiply 800 times 3, over 2,000 Navajo messages the first 48 hours on Iwo Jima landing. If you do little math, that means Navajo code going through the air every minute non-stop for 48 hours. Major Connor and his report to his superior. By the way, this report I'm telling you about is also in the Marine Corps archives. If you go there and read it, it'll tell you exactly what I'm telling you. He said in that report, Major Connor, 5th Marine Division, without Marines, without Navajo Code Talkers, without Navajo Code Talkers, Marines would never have taken the island of Iwo Jima. That's a lot coming from a Marine Corps officer. Because we Marines, we always used to say, just name an island, we go get it for you. That was our motto. But Major Connor said in his report, no, without Navajo Code, Marines would never have taken the island of Iwo Jima. And Major Connor has been in 3 other major invasions before Iwo Jima. So he knows what he was talking about. That's sort of a rundown of Navajo Code Talkers and why it was needed, how it was developed, how it was tested, how it became an official United States military code to be protected, same way as all other military codes that were in existence. Every landing, well organized, as I said. Navajo Code. Well, when the war ended, there were over 400 of us that were certified as Navajo Code Talkers. Today, there's only 9 of us still alive. The oldest one is 97 years old. He went in late 1942. His name, Fleming Begay. He's still alive, 97 years old. He was on the Battle of Tarawa, very bad island. He survived that one. The next island he was involved in, Saipan, a bad one too. He survived that one. He was on the island of Tinian, where he got shot up real badly. So they flew him back to United States, San Francisco Naval Hospital, where they put him back together. They must have done a real good job because he's still alive. Fleming Begay. Well, I told you earlier that I joined Marine when I was 15 years old. People ask me, why did you do that? I really don't know. Except around Tisnau's Pass area where I grew up, I have a cousin who grew up right next to us. They have their own herds, family, we have our own. But when our animals find a nice green pasture and settle down, he and I would get together and play, race donkeys and horses and things like that. He went in 1943 and was involved in about 2 landings, and they sent him home on a furlough. He's about 3 years older than I am. When he came home from on furlough, he was wearing that beautiful Marine Corps uniform. I said, Tom, how do I get one of those uniforms? He said, join the Marines. I said, I want to do that. So he looks at me, he said, how old are you? I said, I'm 15. He said, I can't do that. You got to be at least 17 to join the Marines. Well, I said, they don't know. Well, he says, whatever you do, you got to tell them you're 17 years old. So Tom and I, we went to Farmington, New Mexico, to a Marine Corps recruiting office. I asked the recruiter, I said, I want to join the Marines. He looks at me, he says, how old are you? I'm 17. And he said, where's your birth certificate? I told him, I don't have birth certificate. I was born out in the boondocks, no hospital, no paperwork. So he said, well, I can't let you go in unless somebody vouch for you that you're 17 years old. I said, here's my cousin. He's a United States Marine. So Tom signed the paperwork saying I'm 17 years old. I think he was doing me a favor or something. Anyway, he went back to join his unit. That's how I joined United States Marines. After Guam, the next island to be invaded was Peleliu. As I said earlier, Peleliu is a very bad island. They told us that Peleliu can be taken in 4 days with all the reconnaissance that was done on that particular island. Every landing, they signed at least a dozen Navajo Code Talkers to be with the first wave to hit the beach. Every landing, that's how it was. At least a dozen Navajo Code Talkers to hit the beach first with the first wave. Well, on September 15, 1944, 8:30 in the morning, the sky was clear, not a cloud in the sky. Temperature on the beach, they tell us, 100 degrees. At high noon, the temperature climbed up to 115 degrees. 8:30 in the morning, the first wave hit the beach. As I said earlier, they always assign at least a dozen Navajo Code Talkers to hit the beach with the first wave. In this instance, my cousin Tom was one of them assigned. And we always worked in pairs back in those days because it takes two to operate the communication radio equipment that we had, TBX. One of us would be carrying generators to generate electricity to operate the transmitter and receiver. This generator weighs about 30 pounds. So in addition to all other stuff we're carrying with us, our rifle, we also carry the radio. The other guy carries the transmission and receiver, along with the antennas and wires. That also weighs about 30 pounds. So it takes two to operate this one radio, TBX. So at that landing, Peleliu, Tom was paired off with another Navajo Code Talker from Shiprock, New Mexico. Jimmy King is his name. Well, 8:30, the first wave hit the beach. And they always tell us, when the landing craft hit the beach and the gate goes down, you run like hell, hit the deck, and start crawling toward where the enemy fire is coming from and try to put it out. Well, the first wave hit the beach. All about 500 to 1,000 first wave units rush out of the landing craft. Tom and Jimmy King took about 12 steps from the landing craft, the beach, out. 12 steps from the landing craft, the beach, out. Machine gun fire from the enemy opened up on all of them. Machine gun fire went across Tom's neck. His head fell off. His body fell forward. Blood. Not just Tom, but hundreds of others along that beach. I'm glad they don't show those in newsreel or anywhere, because it's horrible. You could hear, all you could hear, Corman, Corman, mother, mother, blood everywhere. That's war. War is ugly. War is bad. Yet, even to this day, we send our kids out and they carry rifles in some country, men and women. Why? Tom was a young man, 19 years old, had a long future ahead of him. Hundreds of thousands in the Pacific never made it back, and on the other side in Europe the same way. But we continue to send our kids. Why? Because we love this country? Because we cherish what this country means to us, like freedom and liberty? We don't want our parents and relatives to be subjected to the ugliness of war. That's why we're out there doing this. I wish we could find a better way to find peace and harmony with one another without killing each other. Something to think about. That's the story of my cousin. Over a dozen Navajo Code Talkers were killed in action, never made it home, along with several 100,000 Marines, Navy, and Army, and Air Force people. About 24 came home wounded, like Fleming Begay. That's the story of Navajo Code Talkers. The code that we developed was so good that upon discharge from the United States Marine, they told us, don't tell anyone what you did, because what you did is still top secret. You wait until the code is declassified. The only thing we were told to say if people continued to ask us what we did in the war, just tell them you were a radio man, that's all. So, well, we came home after discharge. Sure, relatives all say, hey, what did you do in the war, and all that kind of stuff. And all we say, or can say, is, I was a radio man. Don't ask me any more questions. For 23 years after the war, we couldn't tell anyone. We finally forgot it, leave it alone. It was not until 1968, 23 years after World War II ended, that the Navajo Code was declassified as a military code. And it was only after 1968 that we were allowed to talk about it. Of course, by that time, like I said, we forgot all about it, left it alone. But then people start asking questions. We see it on TV and newspapers. People began getting curious about it. So we start recalling. As a matter of fact, around 1970, when we began to get a lot of questions from media, newspaper people, we organized ourselves. Navajo Code Talker Association, like a VFW, you know. So by that time, by 1968, 69, there were at least over 300 of us still alive. So we organized, incorporated Navajo Code Talker Association, and we started selecting how shall we identify ourselves to show that we were code talkers. It was suggested, why not wear yellow shirt like this? This is a picture of me in the yellow shirt, official Navajo Code Talker uniform that we adopted after 1968. Red cap. We're very proud to serve as United States Marines. Turquoise necklace representing sacred stone for Navajo. Khaki pants representing Mother Earth that we were defending. Code word for America was Nihima. Nihima in Navajo means our mother. That was the code word for America. Why the yellow shirt? Well, every one of us, before we went overseas, took corn pollen with us overseas, like this, in a bag. This is a small one. I carry this as personal use all the time. But the one we took overseas was longer, a longer buckskin bag full of corn pollen, blessed by a Navajo medicine man, telling us that when you ever get into a real tough situation, take this corn pollen, make an offering, asking for help and protection. So when we go into a landing, we tie this to our dog tag. And when we get into a real tough situation, down in a foxhole, with bullets flying 5 to 10 inches over your head, mortar shells being dropped everywhere. You don't know whether you're going to be there for another minute or so. We untie this from our dog tag, take a pinch of it, put it on our tongue, take another pinch on top of our head, take a little bit more, make an offering, asking for help and protection. Of course, down in that foxhole, there's always two of us. Navajo network guy, the English network guy, the blonde-haired kid. He's down there with us. He would do this. Hey, Chief, what in the world are you doing? I'm asking for help and protection. He would say, may I have some? So he took some too. That's what the yellow shirt represents. the corn pollen that we took overseas with us. Of course, the red cap, as I said, represents Marine. We were proud to serve as United States Marines. I have this card. In the back of it, there's a little story about Peter MacDonald here, and also a picture of me right after boot camp, 15 years old. On the other side, another picture of me and another code talker. This picture was taken right after we secured the island of Guam, 16 years old. This was taken 4 years ago, 86 years old. I have this card for all of you. I hope I brought enough for each one of you as a souvenir and a remembrance of the story you receive about what Navajo Code Talkers were all about from an actual one of the 9 surviving Navajo Code Talkers. So I'll have this out here for you, and you can take it home and put it on your wall. I also have a book here, and they're over here too, called Navajo Weapon. Why Navajo Weapon? Because we believe Navajo Code was a weapon, a very lethal weapon that was used to help win the war in the Pacific, save hundreds of thousands of lives. This book, there are several, over a dozen books out there on Navajo Code Talkers. They're all very good, but this one I like because it tells you a lot more even than what I told you here. They're all in here. Like some of the code talkers were taken in prison, particularly during the early part of the war. Guadalcanal, Bougainville, Cape Cluster, in those early part. Not by an enemy, but by United States Marines. Why? Because when you're out there in the front line, everybody's jumpy. So they see someone that's a dark skin, wearing Marine Corps uniform. They think it's a Japanese masquerading as a Marine. So they stick a bayonet on the back of a code talker and say, okay, what's the password? So you tell them the password. Everything. You answer the question, but you don't tell them you're a code talker because it's top secret. They say, well, that's what they all say. So they take you down to the prison camp where they keep the Japanese prisoners. They strip you completely. And you tell them, we always, every battle, we always report to a colonel. So we tell this Marine Guards that taking care of the prisoners to talk to this particular colonel, and they radio. Colonel comes down, identifies us, chews out the 2 guys that brought us in. Don't you guys ever do that again. If you do that again, I'm going to put you guys in here. Eventually, Marine Corps got smart. They signed a blonde-haired kid to be with us at all times. So we're not going to be taking prisoners anymore. That's all in here, a lot more. The 9 of us that's still alive, we also learned something, that every year we lose 3 Navajo Code Talkers. Last year, this time, there were 12 of us. Today, there's only 9. Next year, for sure, there's only going to be 6 of us. Very shortly, there's going to be no more Navajo Code Talkers that actually were out in the Pacific. So, but yet people began to have more and more interest. What did you guys do? How did you do it? How did it work? All those kind of questions. We even get inquiries from overseas. So we decided that this unique legacy of World War II need to be preserved. Of course, we're not going to be here very long and tell people like you folks what happened. But we want to build a museum, National Navajo Code Talker Museum, so that once we are gone, at least this museum would be there to tell the story of what the Navajo Code Talkers were all about, why the code was needed, how it was developed, how it was tested, how it became official military code, how it was used in every battle, and why the code remained top secret for 23 years after the war ended. All that story need to be told. Plus each landing, there's all kinds of happenings with the code talkers that need to be told. More importantly, what we did truly represents who we are as Americans. See, America, we all know, is comprised of a diverse community. Different skills, different talents, different languages, different nationalities, different everything. That's America. So what we did as Navajo Code Talkers truly represents that. We want to preserve it for our kids, for your kids, for our grandkids, for your grandkids, so that when we're all gone, our children, our grandkids, and the future generation can go to that Navajo Code Talker Museum and learn all about who we are as Americans. And that as diverse as we are, when our way of life is threatened, we all come together as one, using the different skills, talents, and languages, whatever it is that we have. We become one. And when we become one, we are invincible. We cannot be defeated. That's why we would like to have our kids, our grandkids, your grandkids, to go through that museum after we are gone and continue that spirit that even though we are diverse, we can use those diversity to our advantage to maintain those things that we cherish in America, things that means a lot to us, things that we cherish, like freedom and liberty. That's what the museum is going to bring to our children. So, we've been going out. 6 of the code talkers that's still alive can't get out anymore. They're confined to their home, can't get out. Only 3 of us can get around. Of the 3, I'm the youngest, so I've got the assignment to go here and there. But it's really a lot of work. Telling people that we need a museum. America needs this Navajo Code Talker Museum. As a matter of fact, this last November, 3 of us Navajo Code Talkers were invited to the White House to honor the Navajo Code Talkers for what the Code Talkers did in World War II. President Trump asked us to come to be honored. We were there. And I spoke with the president face to face, told him about the museum. He said, wonderful, that needs to be done. We have lots of money. We can help you build this museum. I was very glad and thankful, but that was last November. I have yet to see some money come out of the White House. But I don't give up that easy. So I'm still expecting. I've been talking to members of Congress and some of the congressmen, senators from Arizona, New Mexico, all agreed that they're going to sponsor a bill to help us build this National Navajo Code Talker Museum for all America. That's where we are, and it takes a lot of time and money to promote this museum. Chevron Oil Company donated 245 acres of private land. They gave us the title to that 245 acres of land. So we now, Navajo Code Talkers, the 9 of us, own 245 acres of a prime land given to us by Chevron. A good highway goes right through it. We have the land. We have some architects looking at it, helping us. But we still need money. So we have rich uncle out there somewhere. Tell him we got a museum to build. This you can have no charge. This one, you have to pay a little money, and my daughter Charity will be here to sell it to you, and I'll be happy to sign it, autograph it to you, and it'll tell you a lot more. Most importantly, what I find about this book that I like is that it has most of the 600 code words that we use are all in here. Remember the code word for the letter J? It's in here. So my suggestion is, especially you who are going to school, I'm sure your parents wouldn't mind spending the money to buy one more book. Learn the code words. So sometime you're outside, talk to each other in Navajo code, no one would know. Unless your professor has a book too. What you're talking about. Also, those of you who are not going to school, you can buy this book and in the privacy of your own home, learn the code words. And I'll include my business card in here. It has my email on it. So, when you get home, when you memorize the code words, you email me in Navajo code. Only you and I would know what we're talking about. All these scammers cannot break the Navajo code. Thank you. I also had the names of all the code talkers who are certified, right under my cousin Tom, KIA. Thank you very much. Go ahead. I'll be right over here. Semper Fi.
Thank you for your service.
Yes.
They're going to take a picture and then we're going to jump in.
They're going to take a few pictures. Oh my goodness, yeah.
Good luck. I know you're doing a good job.
Thanks, sir.
God bless. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.